Hi all, Rick here on Deep Space Nine, going for a walk down the Promenade, looking at its layout, functions and locales. Now a disclaimer, as the original set was only ever one segment, equating to around a third of the total ring. While parts were overhauled and redressed as time went on, a full schematic ring was never canonised. Despite this, there are of course blueprints from non-canon sources and recreations, such as Star Trek Online's, incorporate those canon elements from the shows that were inconsistently featured, simply placing them on the far side of the Promenade. The Promenade is built on two levels, around the central core of DS9 underneath the ops and shield emitters. The upper level houses windows to space, allowing for a grand view of the station, ships and whatever it orbits. These windows show us where it is, with a visible ring, and the lower floor built into the next larger segment. It acted not only as the primary leisure point for the station's inhabitants and visitors, but as the main thoroughfare akin to a city's high street. Its original function was to act as the limited relaxation area for the Bajoran workforce, and it featured several establishments for the Cardassian staff to relax at, while there were gated off areas for the Bajorans, with far more limited locations. The upper walkway was usually reserved for patrol and guards. Since then, it has had a brightening up, and we're looking at it post-occupation. Turbolifts to operations, the factory levels and the core were on the inner edge, while the outer edge has connected corridors to the major cross arms and habitat ring. I used to think that these large cog wheels here were directly to the airlocks, but no, they more often than not terminate in a turbolift, and are merely built as airlocks in case of a breach. Alongside these entrances is a single transporter room, which was seldom used, but like the one in Ops, was there to mitigate travel times around the 1.45 km station. There are several replimats around the Promenade, which are essentially seating areas for dining, where you can bring either purchased commodities from the many establishments or use one of the replicators to grab something. There are two large points and several smaller areas dotted around the ring. The security office has its own distinct door style, which is protected by a force field emitter. Inside is a single desk for the head of security, complete with consoles, communications and station monitoring capabilities. There is a small armory here behind the desk, and to the flanks of the room are narrow corridors that lead to the cells. The holding area has 5 cells, 4 regular ones and 1 double cell, although there are likely other security checkpoints and holding facilities elsewhere on the station. Next to this was the Klingon deli stand, operated by a chef with a talent for both food and music, both Klingon opera and the accordion. Opposite was a smaller replimat point and one of the turbolifts. Then you had the Bajoran Temple, with its large oval entry in contrast to the harsher patterns of the station. After a slight corridor, the room opened up into a long temple, culminating in an altar which occasionally housed an orb whenever one was brought from Bajor to the station for ceremonial purposes or the request by the emissary. Next to the temple is a small kiosk with a station layout display as a sort of help desk for visitors. Then you had Quarks, which I always found brilliant that it was posted opposite. It reminds me of a saying my parents used to claim that in England you'll always find a pub nearby a church. While anecdotally hit and miss, it's still an odd pairing. Or is it? Quarks' establishment held the largest plot on the Promenade, despite all his grumblings. You could access the bar from both the outside and in, where you could get drinks or food, often a mixture of sourced ingredients and replicated. Inside, the central points were the raised Darbo table, and if you wanted to know how to play Darbo, I have a video on that too. There are ongoing rumours that the table was rigged, but either way, its place of prominence made sure that everyone could see when someone was winning. A large ornate screen of lights towered through the levels of this establishment, with the floor and the upper level housing more seating areas, and the uppermost level housing the holosuites. The holosuites were smaller than Starship holodecks, and there were at least 4. Next to the temple is the Infirmary, where the station's medical teams were based. The Infirmary features a single immediate biobed in a recessed alcove, the Chief Medical Officer's office desk, and a second workstation. Behind them was an array of supplies for the more immediate concerns and remedies. A door at the rear led to further operational theatres and rooms that contained more biobeds. In 2373, holoprojectors were fitted to the bay to make use of an EMH, however it's not clear if they ever installed the actual software program. Following round the curve is the humble tailors operated by Garrick. The main room has his work table in the centre, surrounded by displays and rails of his work in progress, alterations and fabrics. There were several changing rooms at the wings of the shop. Next to Garrick's were 3 smaller storefronts, one of which may have been the area converted into the school by Keiko O'Brien. However, this was closed in 2371 when Deep Space Nine was deemed a likely target during the Dominion War. Then there is the large space, which is, in this version of DS9 you're seeing, the Omega Force office for joint operations against the Borg. However, that is very much insular to Star Trek Online's timeline, so in all likelihood it features one of the other establishments that I'll list at the end of the video, or potentially the original schoolroom too. The Jumja stand originally stood closer to the temple, but after the opening of the Klingon stand it looks to have shifted around to the opposite side of the promenade. Jumja, just for the sake of it, was a type of tree native to Bajor. Its sap was very sweet, with the closest comparison being maple syrup flavour. This sap was harvested and sometimes flavourings could be added to alter the natural sweetness. Ultimately, it was left to harden as a glob on a stick, and then sold as a sweet treat that was also rich in vitamin C. Then we come to the second main replimat, which is much like the first. One larger room may have been a storefront, but it has since been converted into an embassy for the Dominion after the war, according to some sources. This is because they continued to abide by the Treaty of Bajor with only this single post for communication to the Federation. Then there are 2 more merchant shops. Star Trek Online also posits that there are 2 more practical locations on the far side of the promenade, beginning with a ship logistics point that allowed for docked passengers and crews to make amendments to inventories, book passage, and so on. It makes sense that civilians would access some form of travel manifest or flight plans for docked vessels somewhere other than appealing to the central operations or asking around every captain on the station. And again, as we see at the end of the video, locations like this do canonically exist on the promenade. Opposite was the Exchange, which simply was a mixture of mail service and networked digital storefronts to order things to the station. Again, something we never saw in the shows, but had to exist for such a lively trade hub as DS9. However, from the frequently seen orientation stands around the promenade, we also learn that there is an amphitheatre, the consulates for Bajor and the UFP, customs offices, the Banzai Institute, which was a publisher's, a dilithium broker, a bowling alley, a store with gravity devices, the Chief Engineer's office, a dojo, another tailor's, the Diet Smith Corporation, the Diva Droid Corporation, the Dockmaster's office, the Forbin Project, which sold tech, a squid vendor, several pet stores, greengrocers selling produce from Bajor, geological assay office, a mirror house, the Klingon consulate, import protocol office, Jacobson's used photons, I hope that's not torpedoes, the Jupiter Mining Corps offices, I hear it's cold outside and there's no kind of atmosphere, lodgings office, a Millways, the Mineral Assay office, the Happy Bottom Riding Club bar, Richard's accessories stand, Rush Dilithium, Space Liz Sprockets, and the Starlight Lounge, Subspace Communications Office, the Smeakin Jewelers, Tom Servo's used robots, Topril's Vulcan Restaurant, the Tourism Office, Vince's Gym, the Vulcan Embassy, a branch of Yoyodyne Propulsion's Systems, and a Chez Zimmerman's. These are never seen, and in theory could be as much as a small stand to an entire office. With the implied size needed for things such as a gym, and the fact that things like the infirmary continue outwards from the centre of the station beyond often closed doors, we can assume that entryways and corridors around the outer edge link to these other areas, filling out more space than the main promenade levels we see. With that, our tour of the promenade comes to a close. It's a larger area than we ever see, and even bigger than you may think from just observing the upper walkways. But much like the operations centre, it really gives Deep Space Nine much of its character. Upping the brightness and the addition of banners and decorations did so much to transform it from the dreary and oppressive atmosphere it once had, and made it into a lively and bustling thoroughfare. It's got to be one of my favourite locations in Star Trek. Out of these places, what would you visit first? And until the next video, thanks for watching. I've been Rick, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.